Welcome to the Imaginal door. Before we begin, settle in, and remember this: imagination is not idle daydreaming, it is the workshop where your life is quietly made. Let's step inside. You are not waiting for them to change. You are waiting to stop being the one who keeps meeting their old self. That is the doorway. Quiet, uncomfortable, liberating. Neville Goddard's teaching on others is often repeated badly, as if consciousness were a remote control for human beings. That is not the heart of it. The heart is more exact. Everyone you meet is clothed in the meaning you silently give them, and you are clothed in the meaning you silently give yourself. The other does not need to be chased across the world. The witness in you must change. If you keep being the abandoned one, the overlooked one, the one who has to prove love before receiving it, then even a kind message can feel temporary. Even a warm conversation can feel like evidence you must preserve. The world may soften, but you will still read it through the old wound. Here is what no one tells you about trying to change another person. Most of the effort is not love. It is surveillance. You watch their tone, their pauses, their timing. You count minutes between replies like beads on a rosary. You say you are practicing the law, but inside, you are still asking, "Am I safe yet?" Neville would bring you back from the screen to the state. Mira learned this in a very ordinary kitchen in Leeds. She had been separated from Daniel for 7 months. Every evening, after washing 1 cup and 1 plate, she stood by the sink and imagined what he might be doing. She tried affirmations. She tried silence. She tried acting detached, which only made her more tense. Then one night, instead of imagining Daniel changing, she asked a better question. Who am I in the world where love has already found me? Not, what must Daniel say? Not, when will he return? Who am I? That question began to move her. The old assumption said, I am the woman he could leave. The new state said very simply, I am the woman who is cherished without strain. She did not say it loudly. She did not perform it. You cannot keep interviewing someone's past behavior and expect to meet a new version of them. This is where many sincere students of Neville lose the thread. They do an imaginal act at night, then spend the day internally cross-examining the person they want changed. They always disappear. They never listen. They are emotionally unavailable. They only come close when I pull away. These sentences feel like observations, but in Neville's world, repeated observation becomes occupation. You are not merely describing them. You are keeping them cast. The teaching of everyone is you pushed out is not an accusation. It is a responsibility. It means the person before you is being met through the state you have accepted. Your inner conversations are not private noise. They are creative acts. Neville spoke often of inner speech because the conversations you carry within become the atmosphere others enter when they meet you. Raphael had a sister named Anna who criticized every decision he made. When he changed jobs, she said he was unstable. When he stayed in a job, she said he lacked courage. Their calls always ended with him defending himself. He told everyone, Anna is impossible. And she was, inside the state where Raphael had already assigned her that part. Then, after hearing Neville's teaching on inner conversations, Raphael noticed something brutal. He spoke with Anna all day when she was not there. While driving, while buying coffee, while unlocking his apartment. He imagined her objections and answered them sharply. He won arguments that had never happened. By the time Anna called, he was already tired of her. The outer call was only the last scene. The rehearsal had been running for hours. The inner principle here is precise. You do not change another by correcting their outer behavior first. You change the conversation in consciousness where their behavior is being sustained. The unseen dialogue is the seed. The visible encounter is the fruit. Why does the old pattern continue? Because the mind loves continuity more than freedom. It would rather be right about someone than surprised by grace. You say, "I know how they are," and that knowing becomes a prison. Most advice tells you to set firmer expectations of the other person. There may be outer boundaries, yes. But Neville asks a deeper thing. What expectation are you inwardly feeding before they arrive? The Imaginal technique is controlled inner conversation. Not forced sweetness. Not denial. A deliberate replacement of the old exchange with a fulfilled one. Choose one person whose old character you have been rehearsing. Hear their voice, but do not hear the old complaint. Hear one sentence that would be natural if the relationship had entered harmony. Raphael chose Anna saying, "I trust your judgment now." At first it sounded fake. Of course it did. The old state had been practiced for years. But he did not argue with the first awkwardness. He heard it again softer. Then he answered, "That means a lot." He let the scene end there. Small, clean, complete. Do this when the mind begins its old courtroom drama. Do not suppress the thought with panic. Replace the scene. If the old Anna appears, let her fade. Invite the Anna who trusts him. If the old lover appears cold, hear the warm version. If the parent appears dismissive, hear the respectful one. You are not manipulating them. You are refusing to keep them embalmed in your old assumption. Tonight's move is simple. Before sleep, take one recurring argument you have had in imagination and rewrite only 3 lines. Their line. Your reply. Their final ease. Let it be so natural it almost bores you. In the drowsy state, repeat it until your body no longer prepares to defend itself. Here is the counterintuitive part. The goal is not to make them say the perfect words. The goal is to remove your addiction to the old conversation. Once you stop meeting them as the accused or the accuser, a new field opens. I have watched this turn quietly again and again. Not always with fireworks. Sometimes first as a pause, a softer tone, a missing criticism, a conversation that does not hook where it used to hook. That is how states announce themselves at the beginning, not as spectacle, but as a change in atmosphere. Takeaway: the person you rehearse within is the person you keep inviting without. And once the inner conversation changes, you must learn how to let them meet your new atmosphere. People do not only respond to what you say, they respond to the state you stand in while saying it. This is why techniques can fail in the hands of anxiety. You can speak the perfect sentence and still feel like the abandoned self underneath it. You can send the calm message while your whole inner being is begging, "Please prove I matter." The outer words may be clean, but the atmosphere is old. Neville's work is not behavior management. It is state management. He taught that you move into states as one moves into rooms. A state has its own thoughts, reactions, memories, and expectations. When you occupy the state of being respected, you do not need to strain to sound respectable. The tone arrives. The timing arrives. Sometimes silence arrives. The state carries its own intelligence. Leah saw this with her manager, Mr. Chen, at a small design studio in Vancouver. For 2 years she felt invisible in meetings. She prepared more than anyone. She stayed late. She edited decks no one thanked her for. Whenever Mr. Chen entered the room, Leah's body tightened. She smiled too quickly. She over-explained. If he interrupted, she collapsed inside, then spent the evening imagining how he should have recognized her. She wanted him to change, but her whole atmosphere said, "I am waiting to be validated by the room." One Thursday morning, before a client presentation, she sat in the stairwell with her laptop closed. Instead of affirming, "Mr. Chen respects me," she entered the state of already being respected. That difference matters. One is a sentence thrown toward the world. The other is a garment worn from within. She imagined walking out of the meeting after it had gone well. She heard a colleague say, "You were steady in there." She felt her hand around the warm metal railing. She saw the ordinary hallway lights. More than anything, she felt the absence of hunger. No inner reaching. No bracing. Just the quiet dignity of someone whose value was no longer up for vote. That was the Imaginal act. The principle beneath this is that the world meets your occupied state more consistently than it meets your stated desire. A state is not a mood you pretend. It is an identity you consent to inhabit. When you change state, you change the invisible instructions you give to the room. The old pattern stays alive because you keep entering the relationship through the same emotional doorway. With the lover, you enter as the one who may be left. With the parent, as the child still needing approval. With the boss, as the employee waiting to be discovered. Then you wonder why the scene repeats. You walked in wearing the script. The technique is to imagine not the other person's dramatic transformation, but your own changed atmosphere after the transformation is already normal. Build a scene where nothing needs to be won. You are not pleading. You are not convincing. You are not even explaining. Choose one setting: an office hallway, a dinner table, a train station, a quiet living room. See yourself there after the relationship has shifted. Feel how your body behaves when the old power imbalance is gone. Your chest is open. Your eyes are steady. Your voice is unhurried. The other person can be present, but do not make them the center. The center is the state you are wearing. Before sleep tonight, enter that scene for 90 seconds. Do not chase emotion. Sense posture. Sense breath. Sense the naturalness of being met well. If your mind jumps to, "But they never do that," answer gently, "That was the old room." Then return. Most people think changing yourself means becoming more impressive. That is another trap. You do not need to become brighter, louder, more spiritual, more desirable. You need to stop occupying the state that asks others to confirm you exist. Neville's law is exacting here. You cannot remain inwardly small and demand that the world treat you as fulfilled. The state must be worn before the evidence appears. Leah's meeting did not become a movie scene. Mr. Chen did not stand and applaud. But he paused after her section and said, "Stay on this account." 4 words. No drama. Yet Leah felt the deeper victory. She had not entered the room hungry. That was the real change. Takeaway: your atmosphere teaches others how to meet you. Next, we go deeper into the strange power of feeling the end after the hunger has gone quiet. The scene that changes you is rarely the scene where they finally give you what you wanted. That is the mistake. The mind loves the peak moment, the confession, the apology, the message, the praise, the return. It tries to imagine the explosion. But Neville taught living in the end, and the end is often quieter than the wish. The end is not the first shock of receiving. It is the ordinary aftertaste of already having. When you imagine the climax, you may still be the one who lacked it a second ago. When you imagine the aftermath, you are often closer to the fulfilled identity. This is subtle. It matters. Amara wanted her father to stop treating her like a reckless child. She was 34, a nurse in Manchester, paying her own rent, handling crisis at work every week. Yet one phone call with her father could return her to 14. He would ask if she had checked her tires, saved enough money, chosen the right friends. She would answer politely and then feel furious for hours. At first, her imaginal scenes were dramatic. She imagined him apologizing. She imagined him saying, "I see now that you are capable." But every scene made her cry in a way that did not feel free. It felt like begging the past to bless her. Then she tried the afterward. She imagined Sunday afternoon after a peaceful family lunch. Nothing dramatic. Her father had already spoken to her as an adult. She was in the hallway putting on her coat. Her mother was wrapping leftovers in the kitchen. Her father simply handed her the keys she had left on the side table and said, "Drive safe, love." Not anxious. Not controlling. Just warm. Amara felt herself smile without shrinking. That was the end. Not the speech. The ease. The inner principle is that feeling is the secret, not emotional intensity. Many confuse intensity with creative feeling. They think if they cry harder, visualize longer, ache more deeply, they are impressing the subconscious. But the fulfilled state is often calm. It has no need to perform longing. It feels normal. You remain stuck when the imaginal act keeps you emotionally close to the wound. If your scene is secretly designed to repair humiliation, prove worth, or make someone regret hurting you, it may still contain the old self. The image looks fulfilled, but the state is revenge, hunger, or relief after danger. The imaginal technique is to move past the event into the natural aftermath. Choose the relationship you want changed. Then refuse the cinematic peak. Do not imagine them begging, explaining, collapsing, confessing, or finally realizing their value in a grand speech. Go later. 10 minutes later. 1 week later. 6 months later. Find the ordinary scene that would exist if the change were already woven into life. Maybe you are folding towels while your partner casually calls you, "my love," from the next room. Maybe you are walking out of a cafe with your brother after a conversation that did not become a fight. Maybe you are saving a voice note from a friend because their tone is so kind, and yet you do not need to replay it obsessively. Let the detail be domestic. Neville's imaginal acts were often brief because the subconscious accepts implication. A wedding ring implies marriage. A congratulatory handshake implies success. A calm Sunday call implies a changed family pattern. You do not need to write the whole bridge. Before sleep tonight, build one after scene. Keep it 5 to 10 seconds. Touch one object in imagination. A coat sleeve. A warm mug. A door handle. A clean plate. Hear one ordinary sentence. Let the mood be. Of course. Repeat until the scene begins to feel less exciting and more familiar. Here is the myth bust. Excitement is not always faith. Sometimes excitement means the desire still feels far away. Naturalness is stronger. Naturalness says, "This belongs to me so completely that I can rest." I have seen people resist this because part of them wants the drama. They want the apology scene because the apology would finally prove the hurt was real. But you do not need to keep bleeding in imagination to validate the wound. You can accept a reality where the wound no longer organizes the relationship. Ask yourself, would you rather be dramatically vindicated or quietly free? Takeaway: the true end feels less like triumph and more like peace you no longer question. The next lesson turns that peace into the way you answer people before they even speak. The way you answer people in your mind tells you which reality you are living from. You may say, "I believe they love me." But then a small delay happens, and inwardly you answer as the rejected one. You may say, "My family respects me." But then one old comment appears, and you answer as the child on trial. The spoken affirmation is not the test. The first inner answer is the test. Neville made a distinction that remains lethal to shallow manifestation advice. Thinking of the wish fulfilled is not the same as thinking from the wish fulfilled. Thinking of it looks at the desire as something over there. Thinking from it sees the world after it has become true. That means your reactions must be trained from the fulfilled state, not from the wound. Sophia worked in a small bakery in Lisbon. She wanted her partner, Ines, to be more emotionally present. Ines was not cruel, but she was quiet under stress. When she went silent, Sophia's mind filled in the blanks. She is pulling away. She regrets us. She is bored. Then Sophia would send careful, over-polished messages and wait with her stomach tight. One afternoon, after a long shift dusted in flour, Sophia saw that her problem was not only Ines's silence. It was the identity from which Sophia answered silence. She answered every pause as if love were a candle about to go out. So she practiced a new inner answer. When the old thought came, "She is distant," Sophia answered from the end, "No, we are steady." Not as a chant, as a correction of location. She placed herself in the reality where the relationship was already secure. Then she imagined receiving a tired but affectionate voice note later that evening. "I'm quiet today, but I'm here. I love you." She did not replay it for emotional intoxication. She used it to stand in the answer. The principle is that your inner response is a creative selection. Every event is ambiguous until consciousness gives it meaning. A delayed message can mean abandonment in one state, and ordinary life in another. A brief tone can mean rejection in one state and fatigue in another. The state decides the interpretation, and the interpretation begins to shape the path. You stay caught when you treat every outer movement as a fresh verdict. That makes the other person your God. Their mood becomes weather. Their wording becomes scripture. Their delay becomes prophecy. Most people call this being realistic. Neville would call it living from the senses. The technique is to prepare an answer from the end before the old trigger arrives. Choose one trigger you know well. Their short reply. Their silence. Their criticism. Their lack of enthusiasm. Now decide how the fulfilled version of you interprets it. Not naively. Not foolishly. From the state. If you were already loved, a short reply would not become a courtroom. If you were already respected, a question would not become an attack. If you were already chosen, a busy day would not become abandonment. Create a brief imaginal scene that confirms your new answer. Sophia used the voice note. You might use a hand on your shoulder, a calm dinner, a message that says, "We're fine," or a friend saying, "You seem so settled now." Enter the scene in SATs and feel the answer as already true. Tonight's practice is to write no list, perform no ritual, and make no demand of the other. Simply choose your new answer. When the mind asks, "What if they leave?" Answer, "In my true state, I am securely loved." When it asks, "What if they never understand?" Answer, "In my true state, I am met with respect." Then sleep from the reality implied by that answer. Here is the counterintuitive insight. You do not become secure because the person behaves perfectly. They begin to appear in a new light because you stop using them as the source of security. Security is the state. Their behavior is the mirror. I do not say this lightly. There are outer circumstances where dignity also requires distance. Neville's law does not ask you to tolerate harm. It asks you not to build your identity from it. Even if you step away as the one who is whole, not the one begging the wound to explain itself. Take away. Your first inner answer is the state you are choosing. Sooner or later, that answer must reach backward and revise the moments that first trained you to expect pain. The person you want to change may only be the latest actor wearing an old face. That is why revision is not nostalgia. It is surgery of consciousness. Neville called revision the pruning shears because it cuts away the growth you do not wish to harvest again. You do not revise the past to pretend it never happened. You revise because the past, as remembered, is still acting in you now. When someone ignores you, and the pain feels larger than the moment, there is history in it. When someone doubts you, and you feel suddenly small, there is history. When a partner's silence becomes terror, the silence is not new. It has touched an old place. Jonah discovered this with his friend Marcus. They had known each other since university. Marcus was charming, funny, and careless. He canceled plans often. Jonah told himself he was angry about the cancellations, but the reaction was deeper. Each time Marcus texted, "Can't make it tonight," Jonah felt erased. During one Neville practice, Jonah asked where that feeling began. A memory came from age 9. He was waiting outside a school gate for his mother, who had forgotten an early pickup. Other children left. A teacher stood with him. He remembered pretending not to care. That memory had become a state. "I am the one people forget." Marcus was only the current mirror. The principle here is that people often repeat to us the assumptions we first accepted under emotional pressure. An old scene becomes a lens. The lens becomes expectation. The expectation becomes repeated experience. Revision changes the lens by changing the felt meaning of the original event. The old state keeps returning because you try to fix the present while leaving the root untouched. You demand that Marcus never cancel. You demand that a lover text perfectly. You demand that a parent speak gently. But inside, the abandoned child remains the one receiving every event. The Imaginal technique is revision, not analysis. Return to the scene that trained the state. Do not dig endlessly. Let the memory that carries charge come forward. Then revise it lovingly and specifically. Jonah returned to the school gate. He saw the same brick wall, the same gray afternoon, the same scuffed shoes. But now his mother arrived smiling, breathless, arms open, saying, "I came early because I could not wait to see you." He felt the small boy relax. He let the teacher smile and walk away. He entered the revised scene until the body accepted a different ending. This is not childish. It is exact. The subconscious does not live by calendar time. It lives by felt reality. If an old imaginal impression can bind you for years, a new imaginal impression can release the pattern from its root. Tonight, choose one moment where you were reduced. Not the worst event of your life if that feels too charged. Choose one manageable scene. A teacher mocking you. A parent dismissing you. A lover leaving you on read during a vulnerable hour. A friend making you feel optional. Enter it in the drowsy state and alter it to imply the truth you choose now. You are remembered. You are chosen. You are respected. You are handled gently. Keep the revision short. The mind may want to argue. But that is not what happened. Answer with Neville's deeper claim. Imagination is the only redemptive power. You are not submitting a legal document. You are changing the state from which life continues. Here is the myth bust. Revision is not about making the past prettier. It is about removing the future from the past's command. If you revise only to feel better for a moment, you may stop too early. Revise until your identity loosens from the old conclusion. I have watched people cry less from the revised image than from the relief of no longer having to be the one who was left there. That is the true change. The event may remain in memory, but it no longer has throne rights. After Jonah revised the school gate for several nights, Marcus still canceled once. But Jonah noticed the absence of collapse. He answered, "No problem, let's pick another day," and meant it. A week later, Marcus apologized without being pressed and began suggesting plans himself. The outer change mattered. The inner freedom mattered more. Takeaway: revise the moment that named you, and the present stops calling you by the old name. Once the old name is released, you can wear the state others naturally answer. You do not create a new relationship by begging reality to rearrange. You enter the state where the rearrangement is already implied. Neville's language of states is one of his most practical teachings, though it is often flattened into mood. A state is not a passing feeling. It is a dwelling place. It contains your assumptions about yourself, other people, what is possible, what is normal, and what you expect without effort. To change others by changing yourself, you must change the dwelling. Nadia, a violin teacher in Chicago, wanted her adult son Eli to call more often. Their relationship was not broken, but it had thinned. She sent articles he did not read. She asked careful questions. She ended calls pretending to be cheerful, then sat in the quiet apartment feeling unnecessary. Her first attempts at imagination were centered on Eli calling every day. But the state beneath the image was loneliness. She imagined the call as medicine. The scene kept saying, "I am the mother who needs proof she is still loved." Then she found a different state, the mother whose bond is unquestioned. That state did not chase. It did not count calls. It did not make Eli responsible for her sense of meaning. In imagination, Nadia saw herself watering basil on her balcony at dawn. Her phone rang inside, and she smiled before looking, already knowing the call was welcome but not life-saving. She heard Eli say, "I was thinking of you." She answered, "I'm glad you called," with warmth, not hunger. The shift was not in the phone ringing. The shift was in the woman answering it. The principle is that every state has corresponding people. Not because others are puppets, but because consciousness selects and sustains relationship patterns through identity. The state of being forgotten will collect evidence of distance. The state of being deeply connected will notice, invite, and receive connection differently. The reason you stay stuck is that you visit the fulfilled state like a tourist, then return home to the old one. 5 minutes of imagining cannot outweigh 16 hours of living as the deprived self if you keep consenting to deprivation. This is why Neville emphasized persistence, not strain. Fidelity. The technique is to wear the state during one ordinary part of the day before you ever see evidence. Pick a repeated daily action, making coffee, brushing your hair, locking your door, walking to the bus, washing your face. During that action, assume the fulfilled identity as fact. Not with a speech, with atmosphere. Nadia used watering basil. Each morning, she let herself be the woman whose family bond was warm and secure. She did not imagine to get a call. She imagined because that was where she now lived. Before sleep, strengthen it through sats. Enter the balcony scene. Feel the clay pot in your hand. Hear the phone ring from inside. Hear the affectionate sentence. But when you wake, continue wearing the state in one small daily ritual. Let the body learn the new home. Most people believe persistence means repeating words until the outer world obeys. That is not persistence. That is often panic in costume. Persistence means returning to the assumed identity whenever you notice you have wandered. You are not trying to hold a high vibration. You are choosing residence. Tonight's move is to name the state you are entering in plain language. I am the one who is lovingly remembered. I am the one who is easy to respect. I am the one whose presence is welcomed. Then attach that state to one ordinary action tomorrow. When you pour water into a glass, wear it. When you open your curtains, wear it. When you put on your shoes, wear it. There is a great dignity in this. It removes the other person from the throne of your nervous system. You stop making their behavior the doorway into your state. You enter first. Then you let life answer. Nadia's son did begin calling more, but not on her demanded schedule. The deeper change was that she no longer turned each silence into a verdict. When he called, she enjoyed him. When he did not, she remained herself. That is not indifference. It is fulfilled love. Takeaway: a state is not something you visit at night, It is the home you practice living from. And once you live there, you must stop running back to the mirror to check whether it has noticed. The mirror cannot tell you who you are before you decide. This is the discipline most people avoid. They want to assume a new state, then immediately check the person, the inbox, the mood of the room, the face across the table. Has it worked yet? Are they warmer? Did they notice? Did the world move? That question returns you to the old throne: evidence first, identity second. Neville's teaching reverses it. Identity first. Evidence follows. Owen was trying to repair his relationship with his business partner, Priya. They owned a small furniture workshop in Bristol. For months, every conversation had turned sharp. Priya questioned costs. Owen heard accusation. Owen suggested designs. Priya heard recklessness. They were not only discussing wood, invoices, and clients. They were acting from states. Owen began practicing being the respected partner. In imagination, he saw Priya leaning over a finished oak table and saying, "This is why I trust your eye." He felt his palm on the smooth wood. He smelled varnish and morning coffee. The scene was good. It steadied him. Then he ruined it every day by checking. If Priya's email was brief, he thought, nothing has changed. If she sighed in a meeting, he thought, she still doubts me. He was digging up the seed to see if it had sprouted. One evening, exhausted, he saw the pattern. He did not believe the Imaginal act. He believed Priya's latest expression. The mirror still had authority. The principle is that assumption must be allowed to stand unseen. Neville often spoke of remaining faithful to the unseen because the senses report the past. What you see now is the outpicturing of former states, not the final verdict on your present assumption. If you keep asking old evidence for permission to believe, you keep renewing the old evidence. The stuckness comes from worshipping feedback. You say you are living in the end, but you keep making the world your examiner. A message becomes a grade. A glance becomes a grade. A meeting becomes a grade. The nervous system becomes addicted to checking, and checking is just out with a task. The technique is Imaginal sealing. After your SATS scene, seal it with refusal to inspect. Not denial of life. Not avoidance of necessary action. A quiet inner rule. I do not ask the mirror who I am. When the outer person behaves in the old way, you do not collapse into commentary. You notice, breathe, and return to the assumed identity. Build a scene that implies settled trust. Owen used the oak table. Priya's sentence was not worshipful. It was natural. This is why I trust your eye. He repeated it at night until it felt like a memory from a near future. Then, during the day, when Priya sent a blunt message, he did not answer from injury. He answered from the respected partner, brief, clear, unoffended. Tonight's move is to choose a no-checking window. After your Imaginal act, give yourself until noon tomorrow without looking for proof. No rereading messages for tone. No scanning their social media. No asking a friend to interpret. No measuring your worth against their latest behavior. Live as if the seed is underground doing exactly what seeds do. This is not passivity. It is spiritual sobriety. Most advice tells you, look at the 3D and persist anyway. But if that becomes a constant war with the senses, you are still centered on the senses. Neville's deeper practice is to grant imagination finality. The outer world may be handled, but not worshipped. I have watched this one change the practitioner more quickly than almost anything else. The moment they stop checking, they recover dignity. Their messages shorten. Their breath deepens. Their presence stops leaking need. Often the other person feels that before a word is spoken. Owen and Priya did not become instantly harmonious. But the next disagreement did not become a duel. Owen held his state. Priya softened by the end of the meeting and said, "I think we're actually saying the same thing." Small words. New world. Takeaway: do not ask old evidence to authorize your new identity. The next movement is even more tender, learning to bless another without trying to possess their response. To see someone differently is not to control them. It is to release them from the worst version you keep expecting. This is one of Neville's most beautiful and most misunderstood teachings. He urged people to imagine lovingly for others, to hear good news of them, to see them as they ought to be seen. Not because you are superior, not because you are assigning them a costume for your comfort. Because consciousness, when disciplined by love, refuses to make a prison out of yesterday's evidence. There is a way to use "everyone is you" pushed out. That becomes narcissistic. It says, "They are only my reflection." That is too small. The richer understanding is this: the state I occupy determines the face of life I encounter, and love gives me the courage to imagine the highest in another without needing to dominate the path. May practiced this with her ex-husband, Thomas, in Auckland. They shared custody of their daughter. Their messages were cold, efficient, edged with old disappointments. May had reasons. Thomas had been defensive for years. She had been sharp for years. Every exchange carried ghosts. At first, May wanted him to become easier so her life would be easier. That is honest, but it is not yet free. Then she heard Neville's instruction to imagine another as they would wish to be. That changed the quality of the practice. She stopped imagining Thomas apologizing to her. Instead, she imagined seeing him peaceful, mature, and kind with their daughter. She saw him at the school gate, kneeling to zip the child's jacket, laughing softly. Then she heard him say to May, "I'm glad we're making this gentle for her." The scene blessed everyone. It did not put May on a throne. It put harmony at the center. The principle is that love in imagination is creative recognition. You are not inventing goodness from nothing. You are selecting the state in which goodness can be met. Neville's law is not cold mechanics. The imaginal act has moral texture. What you assume of another, you also live in yourself. The old pattern persists because resentment feels like protection. If you keep seeing them as selfish, careless, cruel, or impossible, you believe you are staying safe. But often you are staying bound. The person may be elsewhere, yet you carry their worst face inside your nervous system like an idol. The technique is to bless their highest face in a scene that includes your freedom too. Do not imagine them humiliated. Do not imagine them crawling back. Do not imagine them finally punished by regret. Those scenes may satisfy the wound, but they do not free the state. Instead, see them well. Hear them speak from their nobler self. Let your own body remain calm, dignified, unhooked. Before sleep tonight, choose one person you have reduced to their lowest pattern. Build a 5-second scene of them expressing the quality you once wished they had: honesty, warmth, steadiness, humility, tenderness. If direct closeness is not desired or appropriate, imagine hearing good news about them from someone else. Thomas has been so patient lately. Your mother sounded peaceful today. He handled that with real kindness. Let the blessing imply a world where you no longer need to fight their old shadow. Here is the counterintuitive insight. Blessing someone inwardly does not mean you must invite them back into your life. It means you refuse to keep living with their worst version inside you. Sometimes the changed self reconciles. Sometimes the changed self releases. Both can come from love. I have watched people become calmer the moment they stop rehearsing another's guilt. They thought forgiveness would make them weak. Instead, it returned their energy. The old argument no longer occupied the whole inner house. May's co-parenting shifted slowly. a warmer message, a flexible pickup time, a school meeting without tension. But the first miracle was not Thomas. It was May no longer needing him to be the villain in order for her pain to be valid. Takeaway: blessing another's highest face frees you from worshipping their lowest one. The final lesson gathers all of this into one nightly act that changes the self before it ever asks the world to move. The last conversation of the day is the first instruction of the night. This is why Neville gave such weight to the drowsy state before sleep. Not because sleep is magical in a childish way, but because the gates are open. The surface mind is tired. The senses loosen their grip. The identity you accept there sinks deeper than the arguments you perform at noon. If you want others to change by changing yourself, your final act before sleep should not be checking them. It should not be replaying the hurt. It should not be composing the message you will never send. It should be entering the state of the change once so completely that the night receives you as that person. Darius learned this after months of tension with his wife, Elena. They were not separated, but the house had grown careful. They spoke about groceries, bills, their son's homework. They did not speak from the old tenderness. Darius wanted Elena to be softer. Elena likely wanted the same from him, but each waited for the other to begin. Every night, Darius lay in bed silently arguing. He replayed her tone at dinner. He imagined explaining himself better. He imagined her finally understanding how lonely he felt. Then he slept as the misunderstood husband and woke into the same marriage. One night he stopped the trial. He turned onto his side and imagined a scene after the marriage had softened. It was early morning. The room held pale gold light. Elena was standing by the window, wearing his old gray sweater. She looked back and smiled as if the distance had already ended. He heard her say, "Come here before the day starts." He felt himself walk across the room, not desperate, not triumphant. Familiar. Loved. Home. He repeated that short scene until he fell asleep inside it. The principle is simple and severe. You sleep from a state, and that state continues its work. Neville did not ask you to beg heaven before sleep. He asked you to assume the wish fulfilled and let the subconscious be impressed by feeling. The night magnifies your accepted identity. You remain stuck when you use bedtime as a courtroom. The body is still. The room is dark. The mind thinks this is the perfect time to solve everything. But most midnight solving is just rehearsed lack. You go to sleep as the one trying to fix them, and the next day you wake inside the fixer's world. The technique is the final fulfilled scene. Make it brief enough to carry into sleep. It must imply that the relationship has already changed because you have changed. Do not choose a scene that excites the nervous system too much. Choose one that calms it. A hand reaching for yours across the kitchen table. A relaxed goodnight text. A family member laughing with you as if respect is easy now. A colleague saying, "I'm glad we understand each other." Let the scene contain sensory detail. The weight of a blanket, the sound of a kettle, the color of dawn through curtains, the warmth of another hand. Then loop it gently. Do not watch it like a film. Enter it. See through your own eyes. Feel from the changed self. The one who is loved. The one who is respected. The one who is no longer negotiating for basic tenderness. Tonight's move is to protect the last 10 minutes before sleep. No checking. No old conversations. No emotional autopsy. If the mind brings the person in their old form, do not fight. Smile inwardly and say, "Not that version tonight." Then return to the fulfilled scene. Most people think the day creates the night. Neville would say the night creates the day more than you know. The state you accept as you fall asleep becomes the silent root of tomorrow's reactions. And when your reactions change, the relationship field changes. I have watched this practice make people less frantic within days, not because the outer world obeyed a deadline, but because they stopped abandoning themselves at the threshold of sleep. That is already a profound beginning. Darius did not wake to a perfect marriage. He woke less defended. At breakfast, he did not punish Elena for yesterday. He spoke simply. She answered simply. A week later, there was laughter over burned toast. A month later, a conversation they had avoided for 2 years opened without accusation. The imaginal scene had not forced Elena. It had changed the man meeting her. And that is the whole movement of this video. You do not change others by reaching into them. You change the self who stands before them. You change the witness. You change the conversation. You change the state. You change the memory. You change the nightly assumption. Then the mirror, which once looked fixed, begins to show another world. Takeaway: fall asleep as the changed one, and stop waking as the keeper of the old story. The mirror was never the master. That's all for now. Thank you for spending this hour with the Imaginal Door. Subscribe, return often, and remain faithful to the life you are quietly assuming.